Welcome to the 10th episode in our video series. I'm Dr. David Van Nuys, co-author with Michael Kelleher of the book This is the Zodiac Speaking Into the Mind of a Serial Killer. By now I'm going to assume that you've seen my previous 9 YouTube installments. If you haven't, you should go back and see them first. And I want to thank all of you who posted comments to keep going. I apologize that it's taken me so long to get this next installment out. Between my 2 audio podcasts, my market research business, and my having taken over the editorship of a magazine, I've been swamped. Plus, there are the emails and phone calls I receive from people who are certain that they know who the Zodiac is, and fielding those takes some time. Now, in today's episode, I will quickly step through the Zodiac's last known killing and the letter he sent shortly thereafter. Picking up the story, it's 2 weeks after his last killing at Lake Berryessa. Paul Stein is a 29-year-old graduate student at the University of San Francisco who is working as a cab driver. Around 10 p.m. on September 11, 1969, he picks up a fare who has him drive to Washington and Cherry Streets in San Francisco's Presidio Heights district. This is the Zodiac's closest call at getting caught, because 2 teens witness the shooting from a window and call the police. A number of police flood the scene and they search for him. In fact, 2 cops actually end up stopping him, but end up letting him go because of a mistake that went out on the police radio describing the suspect as a black man. The police worked the area with dogs for 4 hours. Reportedly, there were partial fingerprints in the cab. 3 days later, the following letter arrives at the San Francisco Chronicle along with a bloody piece of Stein's shirt as confirmation that the letter is from the killer. And the letter reads as follows: "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington Street and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt. I am the same man who did in the people in the North Bay area. The San Francisco police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly instead of holding road races with their motorcycles, seeing who could make the most noise. The cab drivers should have just parked their cars and sat there, quietly waiting for me to come out of cover." He said the car drivers should have just parked their cars and sat there quietly, waiting for me to come out of cover. "School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." So there's the letter. Now let's step through the letter again from a psychological point of view. First of all, this is the Zodiac speaking. So the writer once again refers to himself as the Zodiac. My impression is that he takes great pride in this kind of singularity. Not that he's Zodiac, but he is the Zodiac, the one and only. And then he goes on to say, "I am the murderer of." And once again, I'm struck by the fact that the Zodiac calls himself a murderer. This is a very strong term, and I would suspect that most killers would use some euphemism, such as "I'm the guy who capped the driver," or "I'm the guy who shot the driver." Even to say "I killed the driver" would have less impact on one's self-image than to call oneself a murderer. To be a murderer puts one unquestionably outside the bounds of society. I suspect that even kids who run in gangs and kill wantonly would be loath to think of themselves as murderers. They would perceive themselves as justified somehow, and therefore not really murderers. Perhaps Zodiac takes extraordinary pride in being a murderer. It's a powerful word, a terrifying concept. Perhaps Zodiac wants us to know that he's up to the challenge of being recognized as a vicious murderer. Another possibility, and one that is not necessarily mutually exclusive, is that this labeling of himself as a murderer is at some level a form of self-accusation. So there may be sort of two voices going on here at the same time. The letter goes on murder of the taxi driver over by Washington Street and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt. I am the same man who did in the people in the North Bay area. Perhaps the writer is bragging here, which certainly fits into his pattern, but it is also tinged with confession. And I'm beginning to think that there are two forces contesting within Zodiac. On the one hand, he wants to prove that he is cunning and can outwit the police. On the other hand, he wants to be caught and stopped. The letters, cryptograms, and clues can actually be seen as serving both motives at the same time, just as a man who wears a mask reveals something about himself in the process. Zodiac is saying, catch me if you can on the outside, but there may be another part of him that is secretly hoping for capture. Getting back to the letter again, it goes on, the SF police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly instead of holding road races with their motorcycles, is how he spells it, seeing who could make the most noise. The car drivers should have just parked their cars and sat there quietly waiting for me to come out of cover. And once again, these lines can be read in two ways. The first is that Zodiac is thumbing his nose at the police for being stupid, and that certainly fits with everything that we know about him. However, in this passage, we can also hear that the writer is trying to tell us how to do police work in a better, more effective way, so that perhaps he can be stopped from killing again. Getting back to the letter, he writes, school children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. Well, this is clearly a taunt and a threat, and it terrified the whole Bay Area. However, it also gives this kind of impression. Please take me seriously, because it would be too easy for me to do even worse things than murder the taxicab driver. Now, my co-author, Michael Kelleher, points out that Zodiac's threat to murder children was published in local newspapers and resulted in a near panic situation throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. And he notes that this was another clear example of how facile the killer was at manipulating the press, and that Zodiac continued to threaten children in later letters, as we'll see, which were accompanied by hand-drawn sketches of an explosive device that he had allegedly designed for the purpose. This threat against the Bay Area children became a centerpiece concept in the movie Dirty Harry, starring Clint Eastwood, which borrowed many of the facets of the Zodiac case for its plot line. So please watch here for subsequent episodes in which I will continue to move through the Zodiac material. And once again, if you're interested in psychology, be sure to check out my podcast series, Shrink Rap Radio, at www.shrinkrapradio.com. Until next time.